I did not do karaoke last night, honest. I just fell asleep on the plane with my mouth open. So hopefully this isn't too awful for you to hear the tone of my voice, the sound of my voice, the scratchiness. And if anyone needs any cough drops, I'm riddled with them up here. So howdy do, everyone. My name's Russ. I'm here to talk to you about deceptions and operations planning. For background of it, this has been an industry buzzword that is fortunately or unfortunately supplanted by AI-related themes. And that I'm fine with the focus being taken off of it, but what I do want to talk to you all about is that it is still a valuable tool in your infrastructure if you want to do it. So let's talk about how to do it. I'm representing myself, not any of my former employers or any one of them. I'm going to be able to talk more freely that way. So it's nothing I'm going to be saying here is reflective of anyone who has employed me in the past. So let's get on with the show. Yes, I am one of the many of folks of yourselves as another cybersecurity engineer or practitioner, or dark arts or whatever. The purpose of this slide is more or less to kind of bring to attention the general theme of the misconception that there is about us. It's like, oh, the scary toaster connected to the internet. Well, you can manage the scary toaster connected to the internet if it has to be on the internet. We engineer solutions around our security postures, and that's going to feed into a minute. And the last thing I'm going to say is this is not going to be your normal talk. Sorry, not sorry. I will not do erotic interpretive dance unless there's enough loud clapping to make the fairies clap their wing. All right. There we go. So, all right, deception. We typically and historically think of deception as a wartime tradecraft. Deceive your enemy, and you're going to be able to get a better tactical posture. So, just to get this out of the way, there's the voluntary tribute to Sun Tzu where, we're done. Okay. We can put that one to bed. What I do want to pay attention to and respect to is what the NSA created so many decades ago at this particular point. It is the foundation, like these books are the foundations in which current certifications like the CISSP and their domains are rooted within. And they talk about everything from like how to do log management and investigations and role-based access control, change control within your infrastructure, how to test it to make sure it's resilient. They even talk about threat intelligence in information technology and some of these things. But if they can't get it right, how can anyone get it right? They've messed up. It's been in the news in a variety of times. And so where does that leave us? So like even after all of this best effort, it's like we're still being riddled with ransomware attacks. People are still finding ways to get around various systems, either intentionally or accidentally due to gaps. There doesn't seem to be very much accountability of the organizations and the companies that have data loss. It's like, oh no, we lost our data again. We promised not to do it again. And anyways, it's the story we keep hearing. I really wish we stopped sending mail associated with your identity theft being taken, because that saves trees at this particular point. There are more of those going out than CVS receipts being printed daily, in my opinion. And there's another aspect about some of these things, which is, I don't know if anyone here has heard of the cargo cult or the mentality that was behind that, but there was a story from World War II in the Pacific Theater. When U.S. and Allied forces started going into the Philippines, there was an indigenous tribe that was taken aback by this massive military machine and presence that was there. And they thought that the United States and the soldiers and the Marines and such that were there were godlike because they could fly. They had all this technology, looked like black magic to them. They had no understanding as to what was going on. So what happened is at the end of the war, they packed up and they left. And then what ended up happening is that these people started replicating some of the things that the military was doing. They started having marches as a part of their religious ceremonial processes. They started making coconuts and make them look like radio headsets because they wanted to bring back these deities that had brought so much but now were gone. Now flash forward, everyone understands what had happened, but the psychological term associated for people who just adopt stuff and go through ceremony without actually understanding it is now called cargo cult. So that's kind of the background of that. And there's a lot of that in information technology institutions. Hey, I saw my competitor do this thing, I should do it too, without actually understanding why or what the net benefit of it is. So record scratch, we're going to go back to the books. So now you have some of the foundational problems and challenges, but there's this one book that talks about deception operations, and it's the little light pink book. And it's buried in that stack there, and it has topics in it such as storage and timing channel attacks, analysis of them, creating noisy and leveraging noiseless channels for covert conversations, and then it starts going into how to identify covert conversations inside your system, how to use it for a defensive and an offensive posture, and it just goes on and on and on. Now, I'm a fan of government literature, and NIST is just like, bedtime reading galore. But anyone know what this particular book's name was? The NCSC TG 030. Alrighty, a guide to understanding covert channel analysis of trusted systems. So you've defined your trusted system, and how do you have covert conversations inside your trusted system? Deceptive conversations or processes or controls or functions. So same but different words, but it's changed. It's changed a lot. It's now a little over 21 years old. Our taxonomy has kind of adapted and changed, and that's good. That's what words are supposed to do. But what has come out of it from the industry's perspective, when you had vendors showing up saying like, hey, we've got deception capabilities and equipment, and all you got to do is rack and stack this 2U server that's going to do packet stuff. They didn't understand exactly what they were selling or developing or promoting. And then other companies were scooping it up, and that was part of the cargo cult adoption of it. Well, the positives of some of these things, like when you go into having a deception operation, you really should already have a fairly robust infrastructure. Like you already know how things, your network breathes and how it operates. You're going to be able to get another benefit out of having a deception operation. It's a high signal to noise. If something starts interacting with this platform or this system or this capability that you've deployed, you know something's not right. And this is not honeypots. This is beyond, like a step growth past and beyond honeypots. Honeypots can get turned on and turned off. They're really rather easy and trivial to run. We're going to get into the weeds on this in a minute. So if you already have a threat intelligence practice inside your organization, this is also a force multiplier to your TI-related processes, because you're going to get ample time to study your adversaries, because they're not going to understand exactly what it is that they're running up against. So I mentioned before the cargo cult solutions, the plug-and-play stuff, it's not something that should be worth your time. It'll get easily lost in what I describe as the intrusion detection system noise cycle, where you're just staring at logs all day without any actual context or meaning behind them. So this is your Deception 101 punch list, the things that you need to think about and the processes that you work through. You got to know your infrastructure. You got to know your computer network isn't just an idle thing. It breathes. It lives, and because of that, the reason why it does that is because people and human beings are the things that are interacting with it. Does your network's maximum time period of utilization happen to be from 9 to 5? Okay, what time zone? So when an adversary is interacting with your infrastructure and a particular system starts getting really, really excited and it's outside of that time zone window, that's a particular signal that you can pay attention to when you start building these sort of things. Additionally, you need to understand what the problem is that you're solving. Why do you want to do a deception operation or a deception platform inside your infrastructure? Maybe you have crown jewels that you need to absolutely protect, so you can build other types of crown jewels that are okay to leave. You can think of this as the exact same thing that banks do with die packs. It's okay for the money to go out the door, but it's going to blow up in a catastrophic way and identify where the adversary is. So that's but they're using their own infrastructure. They're using real money. They're using their own infrastructure, the bank, to lend towards a faster attribution and resolution of an adversary. Now, who is it you're going to deceive? Is it a nation-state actor? Is it a ransomware gang that's your particular cause for concern? These are going to be influencing your engineering designs and control mechanisms. They're also going to inform your legal processes. What kind of laws you may actually have to abide by in order to run a particular deception operation. A practical example is that in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, if you have the word welcome in your banner for any particular system, you've just given them carte blanche access to access your infrastructure. There is case law rooted on this. Mike Levy was the prosecutor who was the one that prosecuted a hacker, and his defense cleverly said, well, the banner said welcome, so he was welcomed into the whole thing, and the jury sided with him. So despite the fact that he went in and stole lots of money and did all these other things, he was welcome to do so. So you got to really work close with your legal teams to figure out who it is you're deceiving and then scope it appropriately against that. Now, the difference between a deception operation and a honeypot. Honeypots, typically people just leave them there. There are these idle blinking lights, and if an alert goes off, they just kind of get around to it. A deception operation is going to involve interactions. Human beings are going to have to play with it on the defensive side, because otherwise it's not going to look real. It's not going to behave like it's a real thing. Do you need to make this thing run for weeks because maybe you have an insider threat particular concern that you're trying to address? Do you need to run it for months because you're getting ready to develop a new tool or product or capability and you need to build something parallel to it so that an adversary sees that too but wants the fake thing more than the real thing? Do you need to have an LLC or C Corp or a 501c3 show up in a business registry as a part of an interaction point with it as well? These are all the types of questions of the infrastructure. It's not just IT-related infrastructure, it's people, taxes, and things like that as well, because your adversary is going to Google the heck out of whatever it is. That you got to think about your backstop and how far down the rabbit hole you need to go into it. So what is it you're going to do once you figure out someone's doing something with it? Are you going to spin up legal? Are you going to report it to the government and have them handle it? Are you going to go, well, now we know, and then we can pivot our own defenses better? Like you have to have, once you find out someone's interacting with it, you need to understand what your playbook is for your next steps associated with the interaction or the tickle from the adversary. And then finally, there's the big question of, okay, you're done. How do you spin it down? What does done look like? Is there a done? Is there a utility for just kind of keeping it shelved and breathing and fruiting into a particular direction so that in the event you need to have another one spin up, you're not recreating a lot of other energy or efforts or functions? So on the side of the who's, the folks who you're trying to deceive, folks who sell a lot of the hardware that goes in this space, they really talk about all the APT threats. You're going to deceive China and Russia and yada, yada, yada. It's like, no. You're going to give them a good CTF event, for lack of a better phrase. You're going to give them something that they're going to exercise and flex their muscles against, and they're going to learn more about you, about your posture and your maturity in this particular space. Now, criminal gangs, their motivation and purpose in life is just to make money. They're not here to necessarily steal secrets for the sake of having the secrets. They want to make money off of those secrets. So understanding how they're going to monetize their access is going to inform your engineering decisions and scope for your deception platform. And of course, the lone wolf side of things, I've worked in companies where we've had to build up deception operations to suss out and identify insider threats. One former employer was riddled with spies from a foreign country because they were forced to employ these people from that foreign country because they had offices in that foreign country. So what we had to do was build infrastructure that looked real and was intriguing and interesting enough for us to be able to test and validate the trustworthiness of these employees. And if they so much went in to touch the keypad of a particular thing, we knew where they were on the spectrum of trust from an insider threat-related perspective. Once they did go through that doorway and cross the threshold into the realm of, I don't care about you anymore, then it turned into the company making legal decisions about placing them onto planes to various trips to various countries, where at least one of them is currently going through the legal process right now with the Department of Justice. So you got to think about who it is and where, what your goals are, and do you want to be on the front page of the Washington Post associated with the whole thing. So anyways, that's kind of the high level overview of this is what deception operations actually are, and the type of thought that you have to put into them in order to think about your exposures of being caught running a deception operation, because they will fail. You have to think about what's going to happen when the ghost escapes out of the containment field and then starts running amok. Are they going to try to seek retribution? Or I haven't come through the experience, it's probably happened, but I haven't personally experienced it, where there's been a honeypot and an adversary goes, oh, I fell into a honeypot, and they just scorched earth. I have not run across that fear or scenario. I have seen adversaries scorch earth because of something a CEO said publicly in the news, or some other related action that a company had taken, but not because of, they got caught with a hand in the cookie jar sort of thing, because there's no risk to them. The biggest risk that they have is infrastructure is burned and they churn and then they come back another day. They're not going to be sitting in a jail somewhere, so they think. So anyways, that's kind of who your adversary mindset is that you have to think about for your company's position as to where you want to go. So I have a practical exercise of, once you take a very basic playbook like this, it is applicable to a lot of different situations. I'm going to share one of those with you right now. So we're going to go through Deception 101, a practical exercise. I had a very fortunate problem. I acquired 140 acres in upstate Pennsylvania. I'm blessed to be able to have done that, but some of the things that came with that, the things that I was naive about and the things I didn't fully understand, was the land was abandoned for about 30 to 40 years. So that means that there was at least a generation and a half to 2 generations of people who thought of that as an extension of their own backyard. So what does that mean? There's a lot of trespassers. There was no posted signs. I liked to do a lot of hunting, a lot of outdoor sort of things, but when I was up there, I was getting shot at. I had people just tearing it up, dropping trash everywhere. It was unsafe. I also had a squatter, a person who was just living in a tent in the woods. His situation was one where, once I interdicted him the first time, he peacefully packed up and left, and he came back a couple months later. And then I had the state police show up. You don't wrestle the state police. He went into a system process, but he was not a person who I would describe as having all the faculties of best judgment decision-making processes at the moment, but they were not being influenced by drugs, narcotics, or anything else. He just had challenges. So I worked with the prosecutor's office to make sure that instead of going to jail, he went to a home for about 9 months, where he did, and I got to see him again wandering around in the neighborhood, a lot cleaner and more healthy looking, and he's not on my mountain. So anyways, there's ways to work with folks. So these people were coming in, trashing it up, poaching, harassing other folks. I have insurance liability requirements that I needed to meet, so I put up posted signs, and I needed to establish there's a new owner, new rules, we're doing this safe. So I started doing the physical and cybersecurity 101 playbook sort of stuff. I put locks on things. That first screen capture there is 2 people where I caught them on audio saying, let's cut the chains. Well, that didn't deter them. I put cameras all over the place, and I caught people on quads and bikes in various parts, so I now knew where people were going. And then you have to physically be there to interdict people, and I would interdict people a couple of times, and sometimes I would have My friends go up there with me, and we look like creepy, like backcountry folks, tacticaled out. Like the first introduction story I had on that is that we were walking around putting up posted signs, and we hear quads. I had an M4. Those two guys had their M4s, and they're law enforcement. So they're there with their equipment, and then we hear the quad coming, and I start running up to it. I go, stop, 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 stop. And the guy stops, and he's like staring. His teenage kid on the one behind him has got this grin ear to ear, like, Dad got busted. But it's the whole thing. The interaction worked out fine. I have his name, I have his phone number. It's like, if you want to come up, just text me first. I want to make sure you're safe. We were just up there shooting, and they were downrange. So you make the point, they get it eventually. But when you do these things, like with any IT security process, you solve about 95% of your problems with having good controls. All right, again, I mentioned that I'm a stickler or a sucker for good government protocols and things. I was reminded of the DOJ policy of use of force, which is 1-16.000. So I started implementing additional technical solutions. I rolled out fiber optic cables across the mountain to do solar stands for more surveillance, to collect more Wi-Fi, more Bluetooth devices that were running in the area. I got even creepier with the spooky stuff. I was that guy in the woods that would shout at you every once in a while. No one likes that type of voice. But it still didn't exactly work. So like the photo on the bottom left is a poacher who came in, and he's got his equipment there. That tree with the bark stripped off was where I was standing next to it, and someone shot at me, and it just like popped the bark off the tree. Then another poacher erected a nice little hunting hut, and then on the right is a family that decided to drive onto it. He's got a gun in his hand, and they just were shooting aimlessly in various directions. Also got their license plate, and they damaged their vehicle in the process because there's like rocks and stuff, and I don't think it has an oil pan anymore. But at any rate, I wasn't getting through to like these last 5% of folks, and they were clearly dangerous. They didn't care about the rules. So, things weren't going as well as I thought that they were going at, because it's like, while the overall trespassing situation seemed to be resolved, I was still having dangerous situations. So I started scratching my head about what else could I do? Oh yeah, deception operation. So I started thinking about all the things that's going wrong. I went through the playlist, the playbook, and I started thinking about, they know I'm not there all the time. I know I'm not there all the time. I don't know when they are there all the time. They started finding out where I was placing cameras, so I had to move them around a bunch. But what is there all the time that universally people, to include Indiana Jones, do not like? Snakes! So I created a company, the Rattlesnake Sanctuary, LLC. It's got an EIN, it pays taxes, it's backstopped, and I have these signs scattered across the property on the inside of the property line, so you're already trespassing by the time you get to it. And at the bottom of the sign is a QR code. And this is where I'm doing the little dangle of curiosity. You're walking around in the woods and you see a sign that says Rattlesnake Sanctuary. There's the QR code there. Well, ain't that funny? Well, most folks still boop the QR codes. So I had some folks boop it. They ran through my collection gauntlet, and then they landed on the website where they learned about the property and the rattlesnake infestation that we have. So let's go through that punch list again. So in this case, I got to know the land pretty well. I figured out where people were coming and going. I went as far as paying for an advertisement. There's a social media company where you can put boundaries for where you want adverts to show up, and I put the boundaries of my property, and the advertisement that would show up in your phone was you're trespassing. But I would get to see how many times that ad was delivered and at what time that ad was delivered. So I could start timing when people were showing up and getting around all my other sensor mechanisms. So I ended up getting a better idea as to where the ingress and egress for some of these trespassers were, and it wasn't exactly where I was anticipating. I also started, one of my former jobs dealt with a lot of human, and I'm a people person. So I made friends with the neighbors at the top side and the bottom side of the property, and they started helping me. They started also getting into the game of like, hey, they didn't want these people showing up and shooting in random directions either. So they helped spread some of the disinformation about just how creepy I can be, which worked out to my benefit. I have 2 pineapples up there at various points for SIGINT and passive collection, and that turned out to be useful. The story on that was a young teenage couple comes in on this happened on Father's Day, not this last Father's Day, but the Father's Day last year. They come in from the northeast gate, and I know that road takes about 15 to 20 minutes to hoof across. In about 15, 20 minutes, I see them leave. I'm like, all right, they're just walking. It's a beautiful night, whatever. They ignored the signs. Well, I'll deal with that later. Anyways, half an hour later, I see them come back, and then 15 to 20 minutes later, I don't see them leave. And it goes into 30 minutes. And it goes to 35 minutes. And I pull up the pineapple, and they're right near, based upon the RSSI, one of the pineapples that's beaconing for an SSID that I also know lives out of an access point in the cul-de-sac and back and behind the mountain, the property. And there's like a little residential cluster there. So I took the SSID from Wiggle, put it to an address, did a quick Google search on the address. Turns out the guy runs a tree trimming service out of his house. Call the phone number. This gruff old man answers. I go, sir, I'm the neighbor behind you. I've got that property. You may have seen the rattlesnake sanctuary signs. And he goes, oh, yeah. I go, well, I just want to let you know, like, there's 2 people up there, 2 teenagers, a young man and a young woman, and I described them. He goes, that's my daughter. I go, well, you have my permission to go get them. And about 5 to 7 minutes later, I see a side-by-side come on. And then 3 minutes later, I see the side-by-side with all 3 people leave. And that evening, I got a phone call back from him thanking me for the situational awareness, and someone wanted to apologize to me. He put his daughter on the phone, and she did not sound happy, but she apologized. And I subconsciously have thought that I pulled probably a classic CIA operation where I won the battle but not the war. I may have just made Osama bin Laden in 20 years from now. Like, who knows? She might come back and just try to burn everything because F that guy. Anyways, the technology was there and providing me useful information. And this is like your knowing what your logs are and knowing your infrastructure. You have to have that down before you can start doing these things. So some of the folks who I was trying to deceive are potentially dangerous idiots, just people I don't know showing up and just deciding to go bang, bang, bang. I indefinitely needed to have this thing run. My operational goal was to find out who they are and, if warranted, pass it on to law enforcement for them to do their job. Well, I'm not done, but I'm feeling it's actually been a lot more useful because I have other properties now signed up into the Rattlesnake Sanctuary where they're also doing the same signage and collection, and it's actually a useful thing. So this may end up pivoting in the future to being something else. But these trespassers, the thing that I'm doing to them is I'm exercising a human condition. They know they're not supposed to be there. They're already a little bit on edge. If you know you're not supposed to be doing something, maybe the hairs stand up on your arms, or you're like every little sound you're going to be a little slightly worried about. They know they're not supposed to be there, so they're going to make mistakes. They bring their phones, they bring their smartwatches, other electronic media. That works out for me. But with that, they're taking a gamble. They know that there's this crazy guy who randomly shows up, maybe interdicts, maybe not, but you're a gambler. Yeah, that's there. But the things that are in the woods all the time, well, coyotes, it's coyote season 24/7 in Pennsylvania. You see a coyote, the Game Commission says kill it. They don't want them. There's too many of them. Bears, well, the bears will leave you alone. And unless there's cubs, but anyways, that's a separate discussion. Ticks everywhere, no one's really afraid of ticks, but everyone doesn't like rattlesnakes overall. They are legitimately there, and it also turns out that they are a protected species in Pennsylvania. That just kind of worked out for me. So what I did in order to create some authenticity behind this, I created a website, I created an LLC, started making these signs, started putting them up. But while I was making these signs at my house in a suburban area, my actual neighbors were getting a little bit creeped out again, like, what the hell is that Handorf guy up to again? Because anyone who has seen my house, I have antenna shit all over it. I I am that crazy neighbor. But when they saw it and were getting a little weirded out by it, I knew that I was onto something. I knew I was going to start exercising something in people's subconscious that was going to work in my favor. So, and the hook for the collection and the activity was the QR code. Most folks see the sign and go, nope, and then they just turn around and walk away, and that's fine by me. But 2 people have booped it, and that's a separate discussion. So when you boop the code, it's going to put you through a gauntlet. The first gauntlet is a lot of collection. Some stuff from IPv4, some stuff from IPv6, primarily because certain cell phone providers give you a true IPv6 address, but you don't do carrier grade NAT with V6, you only do it with V4. So I now know for sure which carrier you're at, and I can pass that on to the police and say like, hey, they're an AT&T subscriber. They had this IP address on this date and time. You do you. Here's the 2703D drafted. Just subpoena, keep them out. I also know what type of device that you have that you're using to come and visit. And then essentially all this stuff goes in towards law enforcement's ability to take action with least amount of effort on their part. So I made their lives easier, and they prefer that. Now, there's another part of it is when someone boops it, it's inside the property line. Each sign is unique. I get an immediate text to my phone that someone has booped it, so I know where you physically are. So if you're in one particular spot and I see you on camera and you're kind of like scary looking, I'll call the state police and they show up within about 5 minutes. But otherwise, like I just let them know, like, hey, this person's there. They've been there a couple of times. They're doing trash or whatever. So on and so forth. But anyways, the website. The website is a legitimate website. You can go, if you go to it now, it's not going to do anything to you. You have to boop the QR code in order to start going through the gauntlet. So you can just naturally visit the website, rattlesnakesanctuary.com, and it's essentially this. It's a WordPress template that discusses like, we're a collection of landowners that love rattlesnakes, blah, 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 blah. And it has information about rattlesnakes, what to do if you're bit, and a lot of scary pictures, arms swollen up, pus, things that are visually specifically chosen to make you go, what am I doing here? So anyways, anyone ever see the movie, or actually anyone not see the movie The Net? Okay, it's okay to say no. Sandra Bullock, 1990s, hacker flick, right? If anyone remembers anything about that website, that movie, that on sites and in applications that the Praetorians took over, they put something on the page or the system to mark that they were there. A little pi symbol in the bottom right-hand corner. So, of course, I spoke to a couple of attorneys prior to doing this, and they said, well, it'll probably behoove you to have somewhere on your website. They didn't say how I had to do it, but somewhere on your website to kind of disclose what it is that you're up to here. So on every single page is a little pi symbol. Google indexes it, and the page isn't exactly hidden, but you can find it. But if you click it, you're sent over to this page, which is more or less just telling you, like, good for you, you found this page. The cold hard truth is that, yeah, we do like rattlesnakes, but we're just tracking and identifying trespassers. So not a lot of folks have actually gone through to that level of detail. But to date, 2 folks have clicked it. They're currently going through the legal process. It should be adjudicated at the end of this month. The one ended up, what I'll share about him, he had a lot of outstanding priors for bad things involving minors. So they were grateful to have more information about where he was and how frequently he was coming, so he's now taken away. The other guy was a poacher, and the Game Commission is handling him. But most of the time, people see the sign and nope out. That's it. They're just kind of done. Now, with any deception operation, it's not perfect. And I'm not sure this is going to play here, but we'll see. Nope. I need to give access to the Google Drive. So we'll go back to that, and I'll do this. But days since last trespasser is actually 6 as of today. And, yep, I want to give you share access to that video. All right. So I don't know if we need to refresh or... there we go. We'll just do that. There is audio on this, so we'll see if that happens. But yeah, well, anyways, what's going on is that he's walking through the woods.
Good morning.
And if you heard the good morning, that's me just talking to him. And he stops and he's like looking around. And he's like looking, and he's just constantly looking, and he can't figure out where that disembodied voice came from. And that's fine. But he decides that, you know, best not to fuck around because I've heard about this guy maybe. And he just I've had people stop there and talk to me, but he did not see the camera, and he just turns around and leaves. Just all it took was saying, "Good morning," a creepy voice in the woods. And that took care of that. I'm just going to do that. So if we go back to there. So yeah, it's not going to be perfect all the time, but I had a plan, talk to them. And most of the time, folks will do that. Few of the times, the first time I did that, it was a elderly man walking around at night with a dog, 2 kids, and a gun. And I'm like, nothing about that seems right. So I talked to him. He goes, "Oh, no, I'm the guy that lives in the back. I've been trying to call you. We just haven't synced. The gun's for the coyotes. We just want to go out and look at the stars." I'm like, "Okay. Call me next time." And we've squared up. It's fine. So ultimately, you got to remember that these things are not a honeypot. You're going to have to interact with them. You're going to have to make them look real. You're going to have to do stuff to stop them up, to make them stand up on their own. The LLC is legitimate. It's out there. It doesn't make any money, but I just file the paperwork every fiscal quarter just to keep it around. You got to plan and scope what it is you're going to do. Identify who it is you plan on deceiving and how, and work through practice runs on making sure that that's going to work. It clearly, at least when the system started rolling out, it gave me a lot of information about my neighbors that lived up there, because they were coming through with their devices, and I could figure out who was who. I could find them on Facebook. Obituary statements gave a lot of information about the families. So I showed up informed when I talked to them. That psychologically has an imbalance of power over the person on the other end. They're like, "Oh, they can lie and whatnot," and then I can push back, collect more information, and then come back like, "No, I thought you said something else here," and then they realize that they're just not supposed to lie. But anyways, you got to understand your infrastructure health. Make sure that the investment on that is in a good spot. If a deception operation goes bad, it can wreak a little bit more damage than intentionally scoped and designed. That's why, but it's not because the adversary decided to do so. It's because a control wasn't there in place in order to just kind of keep the tiger in the cage, as a best example. And you got to commit to it. You got to do it. You can't just let it sit there. You got to show up every morning, log into the systems, put some chaos in there. There's human beings behind it. You got to add some human beings behind it. And just want to say thanks to the con for having me come out, and also allowing me to do a shout out for another one. So if you want to hear more kind of goofy stuff like this, there's an event next month that we're running in Philly called JohnCon. And I'm happy to talk to you about that more later. But if you have any other questions, here's how to get a hold of me. Out of band. In the future, I'll be wandering around here the rest of the day and tomorrow. And if you also see me, it's probably because you went to the post office. So anyways, it's a very oddly specific joke there. Any questions, queries, posers? Hopefully help get you back on time. Perfect. No questions? Anyone want to sign up? Doesn't cost. Yes, sir. Oh, you'll sign up? Perfect.
I've got property that is public access on one
The bill of materials to keep it standard is go to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, 2x8s, 2x6s, stencils, reflective spray paint, torch it first to make it look a little bit nicer and insect resistant, and yeah, people will leave you alone. I have ring cameras and trail cameras and also standalone things with a zone minder. A little bit of Department of Redundancy department, because it's solar, it's cloudy sometimes. Yes, sir. Oh, I could, but I'm not gonna. Like I'm in a weird position with the property on its own where there's this, my annual taxes are insanely low because it's enrolled in Pennsylvania Clean and Green. And as long as it stays in there, and I don't use it for commercial purposes, so like if I have beehives or fruit trees or things like that, congrats, you get it for free because I can't sell it. If I sell it, it's for commercial purpose, and then at that point I have to pay 7 years of back taxes at full evaluation. So I'm keeping, my tax bill is $130 a year. So next steps. That's a good question. Next steps. What I was planning on going to do, if with the exception of this fellow from earlier this last Tuesday, I had been running 9+ months with no one coming up there that wasn't supposed to be there. So it was working really, really well. I was planning on going as far as getting coffee tins with a motor spinner and BBs. And you put that into the ground and have that be motion triggered. Walk down the trail. Also for context, I am that house at Halloween. One of my favorite things that I do at my house at Halloween is like, oh yeah, I got animatronics and gadgets and things like that. My winner is I've got big tall monkey grass in the front yard that's like 6 foot. I put speakers in it, and I have an endless loop of bees swarming, playing. No one likes that sound. So as you're walking up, you hear zzz, and you're like, ah. So like that's a part of the whole thing is I'm putting you on edge intentionally. I'm playing with your head a little bit in order to make something a little bit more impactful. And that's a part of the whole thing with rattlesnakes. What's up there are timber rattlers. Most of the time they're more afraid of you than you are of them, and they'll stay still with the purpose of you passing. They won't try to run or coil. They'll only do that when they are exceptionally threatening, or like real fight or flight. But yeah, most of the time they'll just like stay still and you walk past them. I've seen skins. I haven't seen them. I know they're there. I just haven't seen one because I'm not paying attention well enough. Yes, sir.
The rattlesnake, how did that idea
Well, how did I land on rattlesnakes? Going back to things that I know that bother people. When I was in government service, I spent 10 years honing my skills of getting under people's skin. Where I did a lot of my deception tradecraft was in the government service of the government, and the people think that ODAs and exploits are like being thrown around willy-nilly and all that stuff, when in fact there's a Forbes magazine article about one of the ones that I ran because the attorney didn't tick the box to seal the legal orders. But if you do a search for Forbes and in quotes, that time the FBI fished a cop, that was me. And the deception operation was no exploits whatsoever, but we pissed him off, we got under his skin and got him to open up a document that had no exploits or anything else, but was weaponized. No code, nothing else, but it gave us true IP, and that's all we needed. So things along those lines of like being able to put you into a corner to get you to behave in a way that is advantageous for me is the whole point of running a deception operation. And that includes as a defensive tool for your own infrastructure. There was one clear defense contractor that I worked with, where we helped them put in the foundations for a deception operation because they had a thing that they really wanted to protect. And we built something parallel, built a whole division. A lot of people would show up, actors, and we would find that there were spies showing up. And then deception operation ended and those people went through the legal system. So it's a thing to be able to scope and build for a defensive function, but also you could use it as the ultimate truth that something bad is going on. For instance, like if all you have is like 4 doors and one of them is never, like you tell all your employees, don't ever use that one of the door, and then someone shows up and uses that of the door, that's an alarm. Universities also have some of these challenges where there are students that are coming in. They may be enrolled in humanities and arts classes. Why are they trying to badge into the advanced physics lab? They have no purpose being there. They're not a part of they're not even a part of that school, but it's on the campus. Like they have no friends, like what? So like being able to understand your infrastructure and signal from noise is what's going to be able to help you craft one of these things and tailor it for your own use. And not think about it as a honeypot. Think about it as one step beyond that, of building something that looks and stands up legitimately enough on its own that if anything were to interact with it, it's immediately a problem, but you have a playbook to keep interacting with it. Because as long as you are throwing their time on that, they're not throwing their time on you, which is the other part of it as well. Which is kind of why I like some of those YouTube videos of people calling scam centers, because that's at least one scammer that's not tied up going after an actual potential victim. So, anyone else? Nothing's being thrown at me, so that's good. Yeah. No, it could be a water bottle. Well, otherwise, I'm happy to give everyone time back if there's no other questions. But, yeah. Thank you. Thank you.